City Council. Good evening and welcome. This is our council meeting for Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. This is the 8th council meeting of the year and the second council meeting in April. Tonight we have Ryan Caith over there. He represents KERM, KGOS Radio. This is broadcast live and then later on YouTube. We also have Cindy Shealy here from the Torrington Telegram. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Councilman Rick Patterson to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is the mayor's informational items. April 17th through 21st is National Work Zone Awareness Week. Spring weather is here. Please be aware of construction and utility workers in streets and on the highways. With warmer weather, there are more pedestrians, runners, walkers, bicyclists, and motorcycles. Please exercise awareness and caution. As always, please slow down and please refrain from cell phone use while driving. May is also National Tennis Month, and this evening we will proclaim May as National Tennis Month in Torrington, Wyoming. There'll be more said about that, I'm sure, later. Tennis is a great sport for all ages. With the warmer weather, please make use of Torrington's abundance of parks, softball fields, baseball fields, soccer fields, golf course, and the dog park. The City of Torrington, staff, employees, mayor, and council recognize the years of fine service to the City of Torrington by Dennis Grubbs, who recently passed away. Our thoughts and prayers continue for Dennis's family and friends. Starting this coming Saturday, April 22nd, and every Saturday thereafter until October, city residents may take grass clippings, tree limbs, and other yard waste to the west gate at the city baler. This opportunity is free to all city residents. Please bring a copy of your city utility bill and an ID card for verification of eligibility. City of Torrington Spring Cleanup Week is this Saturday, April 29th through Saturday, May 6th. City residents may take items to dispose of out to the city baler each day except on Sunday during that week. Again, this is free of charge to all city residents. Please bring a copy of your city utility bill and verification for eligibility. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the April 4th, 23 council meeting as published.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion from Councilman Kelly to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Victorin. Any discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'd call for a vote. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Approval of the consent agenda is passed. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for this evening.
We move to approve the agenda.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve for approval of the agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Deal. Any discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by saying nay. That passes. The agenda for this evening is approved. Next item on the agenda is the public forum. For those who don't regularly attend, this is for non-agenda items. There is a time limit of 2 minutes when the speaker must sign up before the meeting. This is a time for the council to listen. No action will be taken. I have not been advised that there's any request for that in the box. All right. Next item on the agenda are the action items. The first item on the agenda is proclamation proclaiming May 2023 as Tennis Month in Torrington, Wyoming. Mr. Eddington, would you read the proclamation for us, please?
Whereas on May 21, 1881, the USTA, originally known as the United States National Lawn Tennis Association, was founded in New York City, New York, to create rules and standards for the emerging game of lawn tennis. The USTA is the nonprofit national governing body for tennis in the United States and leads the promotion and growth of the sport at every level of play, from beginners to professionals at the U.S. Open. The USTA proudly partners with local tennis programs to showcase the important health, social, and educational benefits of tennis and make the sport available to everyone, regardless of age, environment, condition, or ability, through its USTA National Junior Tennis and Learning Programs and Adaptive Tennis Grants. The latest research by the Physical Activity Council shows that more than 23.6 million Americans played tennis in 2022, an unprecedented 33% increase in participation over 2019. The Wyoming Tennis Association, also known as the USTA Wyoming, was founded with a mission to promote, develop, and ensure the sport of tennis is available and accessible to all in the state of Wyoming. Tennis imparts characteristics such as hard work, perseverance, sportsmanship, determination, grit, positive thinking, problem-solving, teamwork, and social skills to players in our community. By increasing the accessibility of tennis for citizens of Torrington of all ages and ability, the USTA and the Wyoming Tennis Association have contributed to making our community happier and healthier. USTA has declared the month of May 2023 as National Tennis Month to encourage players, organizations, providers, facilities, retailers, parks and rec, schools, etc. to promote and showcase tennis and spread the word about the sport and its benefits, to help players and non-players alike find the courts and play opportunities in their communities. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Herb Dobie, Mayor of Torrington, Wyoming, proclaim May 2023 as Tennis Month in Torrington, Wyoming, and hereby urge the citizens of Torrington to become aware of and involved in Tennis Month activities this May of 2023 and pursue further tennis opportunities throughout the year.
Thank you, Mr. Eddington. And I do note that Curtis Berkeley is here in attendance. If you want to speak to us, you're welcome to. If you don't want to, you don't have to, Curtis.
I just want to say thank you. And tennis is a great sport. Coached it for a long time here in the community, and yeah, we're excited for what comes next with tennis.
Well, Curtis, I appreciate you're bringing it to my attention, and we have it on the agenda. And I would like a motion, if I can get one, to approve this proclamation. Do I have a motion for me to approve it?
I would move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion from Councilman Bickstrom for me to approve the proclamation proclaiming May 2023 as Tennis Month in Torrington, Wyoming. Do I have a second?
As I was on the tennis team in high school, I will second that motion.
I have a second from Councilman Deal and a comment, which was a good comment. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none. All those in favor of my signing the proclamation proclaiming May 2023 as Tennis Month in Torrington, Wyoming, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay. I will so proclaim.
And I might add, Mr. Mayor, that when I was on the varsity tennis team, we played in the parking lot behind the police department.
I remember those days. You could play at night, too, with lights.
Yes.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a special event permit addendum. Leanne Mattis and Braden Connor with Goshen County Economic Development propose a new location for the summer concert series to be held on May 31, June 7, June 14, June 21, and June 28, 2023, from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. with setup to begin at 3 p.m. Chief Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mrs. Mattis and Mr. Connor approached me several weeks ago after our last council meeting and brought up a conversation about some potential options for minimizing impact related to sound for the event. They ultimately submitted a proposal to change the location of the stage to East 21st, facing east. It'll be essentially at East 21st and Main, facing east. As we look at the different traffic impacts and noise impacts and liquor permit footprint and all of those things, it does necessitate a little bit of a close on East 21st from about 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. That has a fairly minimal impact on our traffic pattern. It's not a highly traveled street. We're also able to limit the closure of that street to essentially just the half block there between Main Street and the west side of the alley. So the alley will still be functional, and all of City Lot 5 will be functional. We'll have about 10 parallel parking spaces that'll be impacted right there at East 21st. All of the business owners that surround that location have been contacted and are in agreement with that impingement upon the access for their businesses. And then we'll extend that closure at 6 p.m. It'll run east, essentially to the east edge of the City Lot 5 restrooms, and it will include a small little flag portion there between the City Lot 5 restrooms and Vandal Drug. It's somewhat more complex in terms of managing the liquor aspect of the event, just because it's a little tougher to keep track of everything with this new layout. As a result, I have asked Economic Development to fund the cost of a police officer to be dedicated to the event. We'll try to work with a pro rata officer, our part-time officer, and if that does not work, then we'll bring an officer in on overtime, and they've agreed to cover that cost. We're anticipating that the big items that concern the city related to the safety and traffic impacts, the alcohol containment and the noise will all be acceptably managed. And in the case of the noise, we would expect that that would be managed even better than the City Lot 5 location, just because we have brick buildings on either side of the performance area that would serve to channel that and deaden it. So, please, any questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Chief Johnson. Council, do you have any questions for Chief Johnson?
I just have the one question.
Sir.
On number 6, it says you only have 3 entrance and exit points,
Yes, sir.
so you won't be able to enter the off of Main Street at all?
We're actually going to utilize the sidewalk and have folks walk up the sidewalk and then in. The reason for that is that the stage is fairly lengthy, and so it will pinch that intersection pretty significantly. And if we have folks entering right there, they're going to be walking pretty much right into the middle of the crowd that's already facing the band, which makes it difficult from the standpoint of tracking folks coming in and out with the alcohol issues, and just from a crowd management standpoint, more difficult. We also want to make sure that we manage pedestrian access all along the event. So we're going to maintain the sidewalks open on both sides and then allow access to the event at the north and south at the alley, and then also on the east side by the City Lot 5 bathrooms.
Okay.
They'll have to walk a half a block from Main Street to get into the event.
But the whole area there is the alcohol base, right?
Inside the sidewalk,
Yeah.
so the sidewalk will not be included as part of the event space. So from the curb edge, essentially from curb to curb, will be the event space and the alcohol permitted space.
So you're going to put up a fencing of some kind along the
We're
sidewalk
gonna,
there?
Ed Hawley has graciously allowed us to steal a handful more barricades from him, and we'll utilize a barricade every 30 feet or so, and then we'll string, Economic Development has purchased an event tape that designates the liquor boundary, and so we'll string that along the perimeter.
Okay.
Any other questions from council for Chief Johnson?
Mr. Mayor, Chief, the handicap parking spaces there in the city lot behind Vandals,
Yes, sir.
those won't be closed till 6?
That is correct.
Okay.
The remainder of the City Lot 5 parking spaces will remain open throughout the event, with access from the east entrance and the entrance on East Day.
And Chief Johnson, the business area owners in the area have been contacted, it appears like, and are in agreement with this.
Braden and Miss Leanne and I also have spoken with all of the folks that are immediately bordering that.
And you've had no indication that anybody has come forward against this?
I've done everything I can to communicate with everyone involved, and I have not received any form of complaint at this time.
Okay. And I know you said this, but I want to confirm this. So you and I have discussed this quite a bit.
Yes, sir.
For the city's interest as the governmental entity, you're assured that this can be handled safely.
Yes, sir.
You're assured that you can contain the alcohol consumption.
Yes, sir.
And you're reasonably sure that there won't be noise issues.
We believe it'll be reasonable.
Thank you. Chief?
I would move to approve.
I hear a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve the special event permit addendum as set forth. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Kelly. Do I have any further discussion, Council? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the special event permit addendum as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that special event permit addendum is approved. Next item on the agenda is Wyoming Child and Family Development, Developmental Disabilities Local Match Presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
And ma'am, just a minute,
Yes.
I know who you are, but for the record, would you state your name?
Yes, my name is Heidi Wayland. I am the director of the Torrington Learning Center. With me tonight is Jessica Rohr. She is our new center director at the Lincoln Infant Toddler Center. And we are here to represent Wyoming Child and Family Development. And on behalf of our organization, we want to thank the council for your many years of support financially and also by participating in various roles within our organization. Not only do we provide Head Start and early Head Start services to children in Goshen County, we currently, between both centers, have about 100 children. Not only do we do that, but we provide the disability services for any child ages 0 to 5 who may need a little extra help in early intervention. And so you'll see on the handout that you received tonight that last year between January and December, we did screen 139 children in Goshen County. 139 children were screened, but we're also serving 78 children. That's not necessarily part of that 139 because we do serve children occasionally for multiple years. So that 139, we could have newly identified children, or we could have children that we have served for many years, depending on what their need is. We serve children if they have occupational needs, cognitive, speech. We also test vision and hearing to make sure that those are all set, so that when children go to kindergarten, they are ready to go and ready to learn and ready to be healthy in the environment that they're in. So I want to draw your attention particularly to that second page right there in the middle. You'll see a handsome young man who actually has only been part of our program for about 2 years. He was identified as having some needs a little bit later than we usually identify, but you'll see that he has made tremendous strides, and that little paragraph there was actually written by his mother. And so he has really had some great achievements, and the family feels like he really is ready now to go to kindergarten this next fall. We would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Additionally, I would like to offer for all of you and anyone in the gallery tonight to come up to our centers and tour around. I think particularly my center is a little deceiving. It looks small on the outside, but we have a lot going on. So in my building alone, I have 70 students and 29 staff. And so we have a lot happening in there. And in most of the classes, 3 out of the 4 classes go all day long, and the other one goes part day. But we would love to have you just come up and tour and see what we do.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You have given us data on how many children you serve. Obviously, you're serving parents of those children.
Absolutely.
And here locally, you have the Torrington Learning Center up by the college and LITC in this other corner of this building, correct?
Yes, sir.
So how many employees?
So I have 29 up at TLC.
I have 13.
So I don't do math well in my head. But
So we have about 42 that are between the two centers, although several people that are on our executive team I also live in Torrington and travel to Guernsey for our central office, so.
And it's my understanding that this program has evolved or developed from the original Head Start program.
Correct. So we have been doing this for 57 years. We started off, there were 3 counties in Wyoming that began the Head Start program on this side of Wyoming, and it has just evolved and increased. Currently, we have 13 sites. And we go as far south as Cheyenne and as far north as Gillette and as far west as Wheatland. So we cover a lot of ground.
Okay. Councilman, any questions?
I just speak in favor of the organization and the service they provide. I think it is a tremendous asset to have in the community. I've been in the building several times. I've had opportunity to do that. I would encourage anyone who hasn't to go up there or over here.
Yes, just
Or
right down
both.
here, we welcome anybody. We've made several changes down here. We've done some revamping to the environments. And so it is a whole different building, so do please come and see us. I myself am a Head Start parent. I started with WCFD 20 years ago as a substitute when my oldest daughter was in Head Start, and I was hired on in 2008 down here as a sub, and I am now grown and into a center director, and that is in part by the work that WCFD did for me as a parent and a family.
So, and should add too that, I mean, it's well established that the work that you do works. It's beneficial.
Yes.
The kids do better.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It is truly a joy to have someone who's just been identified as having some needs, and just watching, and we celebrate in our building little small wins. That's kind of our mantra. And so we may have a child who comes in who doesn't speak at all, and after a few months, they're telling you all about what they did with their dog the night before and all kinds of fun things. And just to see them going from no speech at all to being able to tell you stories and engaging and being able to communicate with their peers and learning how to do that parallel play and all that imaginative play. And it's inspiring, and it is a great thing to see.
And we work in partnership pretty closely with the public schools in the kindergarten so that we know what their early learning standard requirements are, and then we can work on the kids going into kindergarten so that they are ready for that rigorous environment that kindergarten does bring for young kids.
And to go along with that, particularly with our developmental disabilities, we have the school district, the special educators from the school district come over and spend at least 3 days getting to know the kids that will be transitioning, looking over what their needs are so that the school district is ready for them when they come to the kindergarten. We have a very good communication system.
And I also want to reiterate what Councilman Patterson said. I greatly support this. At this point in history anyway, your programs, the 2 here in Torrington, provide services to children that are not available in the public schools.
Yes.
The public school system at present starts at kindergarten through
Correct.
12. This fills that gap, 0 to pre-kindergarten.
Correct.
Yes, and we offer community screenings. Our screenings are free to any child in the community, whether they're in our program or not. So community children can come in to our screenings. I have disabilities identified there, and we do provide services in other child care programs in the community.
And one thing I do want to mention is that sometimes families are hesitant to get their child screened because they're afraid of what the cost is. So as Jess mentioned, we don't charge for the screenings, and we do not charge for our services. All of the services that we give to the children are free to the families.
And we provide busing for children who have disabilities that need to come to the center and have services. We have a young gal in a single mom in Lingle whose child is getting services through us, and we do go and pick her up. So we provide free transportation for those families for children with disabilities.
And you also provide some in-home services.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
All right. Are you requesting anything from us tonight, or is this just
So-
informational?
So in the past, the council has given us a donation. We are asking that as you go through the budget process, that you do consider what has been given in the past, and hopefully there is the ability to keep supporting us financially, and also, again, coming up and seeing what we do and spreading the word about what we do.
All right, thank you. Any further questions?
Do you have a speech pathologist?
We
on
do.
staff?
We have a speech pathologist on staff, yes.
I don't see any more
Okay,
questions.
okay.
We appreciate your time, and
Thank you.
you were
Thank
quite
you for
well
your
in
time.
presentation of your 2 facilities here in Torrington.
Thank
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Torrington Rotary Torrington Rotary Club Splash Pad Project presentation. And I see Judge Nate Hibben, who's also the president of Rotary this year.
Good. Well, Mayor and Council, good evening. It's very nice to see you all. My name is Nate Hibben, and I'm here doing my best in my individual capacity this evening. I'm here as the current president of the Torrington Rotary Club. I have the pleasure of serving in that role for a few more months. A while back, about a year ago, our Rotary Club started informally visiting about some projects that we might sponsor as a local organization. And as part of that, we thought, how could we benefit our community? How could we work with kids? How could we work on a project that's needed? And the project really grew from there. We started thinking about something smaller, and before too long, we started thinking about something much bigger. And so that turned into a splash pad project. What the Rotary Club would like to do is to start on a splash pad project here in Torrington, Wyoming. So I've met with Mayor Doby, I've met with Mr. Estes, and I've shared some of the preliminary ideas that the Rotary Club has talked about. And I see Mr. Estes has a copy there as up on the map, Jordan Park. So I think that would be the general idea, that we are currently thinking about a place for a splash pad. We have commissioned a conceptual plan from Baker and Associates. I've sent that to Mr. Estes. I didn't print it. It's quite long. I'd be glad to share that with the council. Mr. Estes has a copy. He certainly can share that with you all as well. It does not lay out some of the specifics about where a splash pad might be. Instead, it addresses things like what sort of infrastructure needs to be in place, what requirements might it be built towards, and what might the potential cost be. So what I would like to do this evening is, this is really my first chance to, or our first chance to visit about this as an idea in front of the council. As I said, we've talked about it informally. I think from our perspective, from mine, what I'm looking for is really 3 things. The first would be a chance just for general feedback from the council and perhaps the public as well. Second, I'd like the council to think about this location, if that is a satisfactory location to the public, to the city, and to the council. I'll tell you from my perspective, I think it's an ideal location. It's centrally located. It's the largest park, of course. It has sufficient separation from the existing pool, but also has access to things like restrooms. And the other reason I really like it is because it is adjacent to the walking path, which is another ongoing project, of course, that the city has been instrumental in investing in. The rec board, the Rotary Club as well, continues to expand that walking path. So wherever this project might be, and whatever it might ultimately look like, I personally would like to see it in one of those places, a place that's centrally located, an existing park, and something that's close to the existing walking path. Now, the way we see this playing out would be as a partnership between the Rotary Club, between other service organizations, between other community-minded individuals or organizations. There will be a fundraising component to this, a grant application component to this. I will not be part of that. Other members of the Rotary Club will be spearheading the fundraising component. I'll be completely separate from that, but that will be a part of it. And there'll be an opportunity for individuals to support, to help, to volunteer with this project at a variety of different levels, all the way from perhaps $100 for pavers, $120 for a small paver, an engraved paver, up to large sponsorship of a water feature or other things like that. So that's where things currently stand. And as I was running through my list, so the first thing, we're looking for general feedback. Second, for the location. And then third, visited with Mr. Estes, but I'd also like the city to be thinking about what sort of requirements, what sort of regulations, what would the specifications be from the city's perspective? How would this need to be built? Because at the end of the day, this would be something that would be organized, be built, be fundraised through another entity outside the city. But I think we are envisioning a situation that would be donated to the city for its future use. And so it would be a part of the city park at the end of the day, and it would need to be built according to city specifications. So that is a very high-level overview. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
If I
Councilman
could
Patterson.
just make a statement, Your Honor, I guess.
It's
hard not to.
I understand.
My first experience with the splash pad was several years ago at Scotts Bluff at the zoo, when I watched my grandkids have a great time there. Just recently, there's been one put in at Fort Laramie.
Yeah.
And I know Torrington kids go to Fort Laramie to take advantage of that. I've thought for a long time that this would be a great thing to have in Torrington, so I'm very much in support of it. I think everything else is just details. How do we make it happen? How do we answer all those questions and things? I think we could sort that out. But at least in principle, I very much support the idea of this. I like these entities in the community, especially these relatively low cost, relatively low maintenance, and it's great for the kids. I mean, it's a very popular feature.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilman. I'll tell you, I have to share that sentiment has been, in my experience, been the sentiment of everyone we've shared this with. In fact, the limit is not the need, it's not the vision, it's not the energy, it's not the space. The limit, quite candidly, is going to be the money. And in that vein, these sorts of projects can be rather modest. They can be accomplished relatively simply. They can be quite grand, like the one at the Scotts Bluff Zoo. Now, I don't think we're envisioning something quite on that scale, just because of the dollars that may be involved. Well, yeah, there's not going to be a zoo there. Okay. But we would, yes, the scope of the project will be defined by the amount of money that we can raise and that we can receive. Yeah, thank you for that.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Deal.
Don't want to get the cart before the horse, but I do know for a fact, as I read the grant, land and water conservation funds were used for the splash pad in Moorcroft. It's a matching grant, but just to let you know that that might be a possibility. That number one. And number two, you mentioned separation from the existing pool area. I can envision small children that might be at the wading pool or going from the splash pad to the wading pool. And I know the street's not very busy at all there, but there is a street to cross. Was there any consideration given to the area north of the swimming pool?
We have. We've thought about that very idea as well. I'll certainly be open to that discussion too. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good question. When I say separation from the pool, a couple considerations in my mind. First, as I said, as a person who uses the pool, someone whose children go to the pool, I don't know what the future of that facility is long term. The other reason that I like some separation from it is that if that facility looks different moving forward, that there still is room for this to exist, not as a standalone, but separate from that. One of our other members raised another point, and that's cost. That the pool is not prohibitively expensive for many people, but to go often, to go every day perhaps, it starts to add up as a cost. This would be a no-cost water feature type of thing, and so still be at the park.
As far as the cost goes, the placement of it will determine really how much it costs to get the water to it, electricity to it, things like this.
That's right. So in the conceptual plan, almost 50% of the preliminary cost that we received was related to building a new bathhouse. a new restroom area, changing area, things like, if we were to not include that, for example, the cost substantially decreases. And so that'd be the first that we'd be thinking about. We did look at some other locations, but we don't think it has, and Mr. Estes, of course, we don't think that has sufficient infrastructure with pipes, things like that. So we know we've got a good water supply right there at Jordan 2.
Correct.
Is that correct? We said
That's correct, yeah. The reason we looked at this place right here is, there's a couple other reasons that Mr. Hibben didn't allude to. One is this sand area here. This is big sand in here, it's gravel. We would not want that drug into the splash pad because they'll be tracking that in there, and we're worried if we put it in here. We looked at this spot, there's a well right here, right in the middle, that'll never be moved. The other issue with this location is the ball games that are going on here. So this is gonna be very noisy, and they're gonna be complaining about that, just interaction. If we move it over here, it is on the south side of this ditch that runs through here. It's a big area that we can expand, so if they would get more donors to buy more water features, they could expand it possibly in here. We have off-street parking here. We do have a sand pit here, but it's really fine sand. It's sugar sand. It'd be a less intrusive into this thing, truck tracked in there, but it will have to be a closed system to where it loops like the swimming pool does. Will be maintained by our pool staff. Our Mike Lira would be the one right now that would be taking care of it. Testing it, it's a lot of testing requirements.
And one thing that I want to mention to all concerned, because I did meet with Judge Hibben and Dennis on this, was the water will be recycled. We're not running splash water that's going down in the sewer and off to the lagoons. It will be recycled water.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Victor?
Mr. Hibben, the one thing that comes to my mind in your preliminary plans that I hope, and I'm sure you have involved or included it, is some sort of safety barricade in order to contain children from, I'm thinking about that corner of that park, and if they had the ability to, run away from the splash pad and potentially get into the street. I know that is a busy roadway there. If there was something in your plans to sort of prevent that from happening, I too echo the Councilman Patterson's statements that this is a great feature to include in our city, in our parks. I just hope that's something that is top of your mind in the planning stages of this.
Yeah, very good.
Facility.
And Councilman Victor, and thank you. I think that's well said. Yeah, we certainly agree.
Have you got any preliminary estimates of what something like this might cost?
We do. It's expensive. It's into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it'd be too soon for me to say just how many.
And over time, the idea would be this would be paid for by donations and grants and so on. Eventually, the city would own it because it's being placed on city property, and
That's right.
thereafter, the city would be responsible for maintaining it.
Yes. Now, I would hope the Rotary Club will own this project. I don't want to speak for future members, but this is something that I want people to be proud of. I don't foresee creating it and then walking away. Again, that partnership model is the example that I'm relying on, and the best example I can give of that is other Rotary Club, Lions Club, Elks Clubs in other cities. In Casper, for example, building a playground and then working one weekend to keep that playground maintained and cleaned and updated. Those sorts of things, I think, are what this will look like going forward. Yeah, but yes, you're right. At the end of the day, owned by the city.
And this is the question in my mind. Regarding your planning, your plans that Baker and Associates are working on,
Correct.
it would seem to me, I'm no engineer, but it would seem to me they'd want to know where the location is, or they couldn't get off first base with their are out of the batter's box with their plans unless they know where the location's going to be.
Yeah, exactly right. And the location will help drive things like those safety features. It will drive cost, what's the existing infrastructure, and then they can begin to design to that place. So that's a part of what we're looking at. I don't know that I necessarily am asking for a decision this evening. Perhaps you'd like some more information. Maybe you'd like to see the full conceptual plan. But as part of this, yes, I'd like the council to say, design it for this space. This is where we think this should be, wherever that may be. Yeah.
And I'll say this, I know Mr. Estes is fully aware of everything in the city, and then some. And there's been a lot of thought to which is the most serviceable spot for a splash pad, right, Dennis?
That is correct, Mayor. We think this is the best spot. All the kids are there. It's got a trail leading to it that keeps them off the street. And because of Rotary, we're going to have crosswalks on all those this summer. It's going to make it even safer. So I just like the location. We're not dragging kids like clear down to the Pioneer Park across the busy highway, and because that's what will happen if we put it down there. They'll be walking down there, and so I just like it here. The kids are here, and the police can really watch that area. If there's some issues there, they're all kind of there.
Any more questions for Judge Hibb? Let me just inquire of council. I
Thank you.
kind of look for guidance on what council wants. Do you want to approve a spot this evening or get some more information and maybe approve a spot later? Do you have any indication of feeling of council regarding approval of a spot?
Well, I would think it'd be a preliminary spot for it, but ultimately, coming down to wind up logistics of where to build it is going to be to determine what spot it goes to. But yeah, it'd be a nice spot there, yeah.
Judge Hibbett, may I ask you a question? Clear over there. So where is Baker and Associates at in the planning stage? Are they looking for guidance on the spot so they can advance their plans?
All we have from them right now is a conceptual plan. Really, it's a 200-page outline of what these look like and what it might cost, with some examples from other cities. The next step, I think, is just that, though. It's to say, here is the spot. We can formally engage Baker or another engineering, I want to use Baker, but formally engage an engineering company to design to that spot, and then the fundraising portion of this can really begin in earnest. We can go to people and actually say, here is the plan, here is the project, here's where it will be.
The other thing, Mayor, I might add is the one issue, I don't know if these things would have to have a sewer tap. I don't know that anything goes down the sewer, other than like down the gutter, like if we drained it and cleaned it or whatever, it would go down the gutter, not the sewer. But the sewer could be an issue here. That's why we need to get Baker involved and get them to look at all the utilities, the needed water flow for it, which won't be a bunch, but we have power there, we got water in the street, we have street lighting there, so.
But what I hear you saying, Mr. Estes, is there could be a hitch where we don't necessarily want to approve it tonight. There's a little bit more investigation that needs to be done.
Well, they need to design to it. They need to look at this spot and say, hey, we got this much water here, we got this much here, but if something come up like, say, a sewer tap of some sort, I don't know where the closest sewer is there. I believe it's in that street, but going into that old trailer court there, I believe. But we have to look into that. But if they can preliminary design to this, and then we can go from there.
Councilman Patterson.
If we could move to approve its placement there, and then if we run into a problem, that could be altered.
Correct.
And that would get us at least going, so it doesn't impede your...
Yeah. So what I might suggest is that third prong that I talked about of what are the exact specs that are necessary, and sewer tap, it's utilities, whatever that is. So perhaps the emphasis needs to be on the word preliminary. Yes, go ahead and make a preliminary site plan for this spot at Jordan, something to that effect, perhaps.
Mr. Mayor, could I make a motion to approve this as the provisional site Should it prove to be an acceptable site, that the splash pad be placed there?
I have a motion from Councilman Deal to approve this site just west of the volleyball court in Jordan Park as a preliminary or a provisional site for this proposed splash pad. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Deal for that motion to approve this as a preliminary provisional spot just west of the volleyball court there in Jordan Park. Any further discussion? Did I have a second?
Yes, I second.
Councilman Victor, second. Do I have any further discussion?
Just mention that once we take this action, and it looks likely that it's going to pass, it would allow Rotary to put a sign there that says future site to help with their fundraising. I think that makes a difference as people drive around and look at it and they publicize it. So just a comment.
Okay. Any further discussion, Councilman? Hearing none, I'd call for vote. All those in favor of approving that site in Jordan Park for the provisional or preliminary site for the proposed splash pad, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay. That's approved as the preliminary provisional site for the splash pad. Thank you, Judge Hibben. All right. The next item on we are going to leave regular session, and council will now convene as a Board of Adjustment. We're on agenda item 5. Tom McIntosh is requesting a setback variance for an 8-foot front porch extension from the required 25 feet to 17 feet.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mayor.
Estes.
Mr. McIntosh apologizes. He had a doctor's appointment in Cheyenne. He could not make it tonight. We visited this house about a month ago on the garage, the big garage in the back. There was no issues with that. He come back later and said he wanted to put a front porch on it because it gets so hot on that west side. So he is asking for an 8-foot porch on the front of this house. We had no discussion in the planning commission. They did meet, but there was really no discussion. The neighbors have not weighed in anywhere. Staff would recommend approval.
All right, so this is now open for public hearing. Do we have any questions from council for Mr. Estes?
Mr. Estes, when he talked to us about building the garage, he had suggested there was the possibility of tearing down the existing garage.
He has not made a decision on that yet,
Okay.
that I know of.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because this is taking up most of the lot. If he leaves that, puts another garage and then extends his.
Yeah, I
porch
believe
out
he's
front.
probably going to end up getting rid of that. It's going to be pretty tight in there.
I don't remember, does the house just to the left of that one, does that have a overhang too?
I'm sorry?
Does that house to the left of his have a porch overhang too?
It does a little bit, but not as far as he wants to come out. We try to line, if they're already sticking out on one house, we just try to line them up, but there was nothing close, so we had to do the variance.
Any further questions from council for Mr. Estes? Do I have any public comments either for or against this request for a setback variance? Seeing none, I'll close this public hearing on this request for variance and would entertain a motion from council.
I would move to approve.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve this variance for Tom McIntosh. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Kelly. Any further discussion, gentlemen? I will call for a vote on approval of the requested setback variance as set forth, requested by Mr. Tom McIntosh. All those in favor of granting or approving that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that variance is approved. Next item before the council as a Board of adjustment is B there on page 2 of your agenda. Roxanne Lyra is requesting a variance on the south and west side from the 25-foot required setback to 15-foot on tracks A1 of the Lopez Edition, third filing.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, there's two separate voting on this one. One will be the zone change, and the second would be the variance. So the zone change affects the variance, because if it stays what zone it is, it has a bigger setback. So if you approve the zone change, then we have the setback to get correct after that. So what she would like to do here is, if you're unfamiliar with this property, it's up above the old Jordan ball field, up here in this area right here. And I'll zoom in on it, but I don't know why it's doing that. But up here, she wants to build a home right there called a barndominium, which is a metal structure with a home in it and a pretty large garage. So it'll look similar to this, but it'll be metal sided, metal roofed. But these two lots here, she would like to change the zone from R1, which is the most restrictive, to R6A. A little history on that is, over 30 years ago, this lot and this lot, they come into the city and wanted it changed from R6 to R1 for some reason. Now that we want to build on it, they both brought them back to the R6. Her reasoning behind that is there's a few reasons. One is it matches the area. R1's too restrictive for this area. R6, we can have a few animals. She would like to have a few chickens, and she can have a metal building. In R1, we can't have metal structures. So that's the first zone change. So if you'd want any questions on that, I could stand to answer those. And she is here if you'd like to visit with her. Ms. Lyra is here.
And just for the record, we will move on to C and come back to B. So that's open for public hearing on subpart C. Roxanne Lyra is requesting a zone change from R1 to R6A on tracks A1 and A2 of the Lopez Edition, third filing. That's now open for public hearing. We've heard an explanation from Mr. Estes. Any further questions from Councilman for Mr. Estes? Hearing none. Are there any public comments for or against this requested zone change from R1 to R6A? Seeing none, I will close subparagraph C, the public hearing for that, and I would entertain a motion from council.
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion from Councilman Deal to approve Roxanne Lyra's request of a zone change from R1 to R6A on tracks A1 and A2 of the Lopez Edition, third filing. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second from Councilman Patterson. Any further discussion, gentlemen?
I have a question. I probably should have asked for this clarification before, but it'll work here. The area that we're zone changing, or looking at zone changing, are there any structures in it?
No, sir.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion?
I just would like a little bit more clarification on what was discussed by the zoning, or the planning commission there concerning this. Looked like Chairman Cronk was concerned about replatting that area.
Chairman Cronk brought up some pretty valid points, but this whole area up here has been vacant for years. It's just a big sand dune, as you probably all know. But it has several different owners here, from our substation, which is right over there, up here, and all this area around here. In order for this to be replatted, I would have to get with the owners and ask them to do that. That's not something the city generally does. They would have to come to the city and want, hey, we need to replat this and get the infrastructure put in and designed. The reason you're seeing these houses come in here is because they're able to get utilities off of this street. Anybody that builds behind them is going to have some issues, because then you'll have to design the water, sewer to get up in there, but you just can't stub a water line in there and a sewer line without designing the whole area. So I foresee a lot more of these metal buildings going in here, like Mr. Pieper put in. I foresee a lot of that, no utility use, but who knows where it's going to go. And Chairman Cronk was concerned about that, and he had some issues with he remembered years ago, they did some work in there, plating-wise and zoning-wise, but there's no record of it in the books anywhere that I know of. So, ever since I've been here, the last 30 years, these have always been zoned R1. I don't know how it got that way, but this metal building over here is also zoned R1 for some reason, and it's a metal storage building. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking, but it just doesn't fit the area, but he did have some valid concerns, so.
None of the neighbors are concerned about a metal structure?
I've not heard any concerns about that, no, sir.
And just to be clear, the planning commission voted to allow it, but Chairman Cronk had some concerns and voted against.
I believe if I remember right, Chairman Cronk voted for the zone change, but not for the variance on the setbacks.
All right, I had a motion and a second. We're in the discussion stage of the proposed zone change. Does council have any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of granting Roxanne Lira the requested zone change from R1 to R6A on tracks A1, A2 of Lopez Edition, third filing, as set forth in the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay. I hear no nays, therefore, the requested zone change, as indicated from R1 to R6A, requested by Roxanne Lira, is approved.
Thank you.
Now we'll go back up to subparagraph B, and I'll open that for public hearing again. That is Roxanne Lira requesting a variance on the south and west side from the 25-foot required setback to 15-foot on tracks A1 of the Lopez Edition, third filing. Mr. Estes?
Mayor, thank you. Again, same lot. What happens with these corner lots is you got setbacks from both streets. So you got 25 foot here and 25 foot here. So it really pushes you back in a corner where you really have no backyard and it's really hard to build. She is asking to bring that front, that west side closer and the south side closer. And you're only approving the lot 1A. And the reason you're doing that is because if somebody built behind her, they automatically can line up with what that variance is. And that was some of Mr. Cronk's concern. And so he was concerned that now we're going to have to let all these line up. Instead of being 25 foot, it's going to be 15 foot from the property line, if that ever gets built. So, again, I've had no input from the public, and staff would recommend approval. Just another point of clarification, this got a variance a few years ago to be 10 foot on the south side from the property line.
So this would actually be,
Just 5 foot further to the north, correct.
But on the west side, there's no street there, so where,
There's actually a street platted there,
yeah.
but as you know from right here, it goes up about 15 foot really quickly.
Into sand.
Solid sand, yeah.
so from the structure that's already there, how far over would the other building be? I mean, how much distance would be between the two buildings?
The building, well, I believe he's 25 foot from the street, and then it's probably a 60-foot right-of-way, and then another 15 foot from that. I believe that's a 60-foot right-of-way in there, platted in there. And now on this one too, she's got an alley in this here too. That's not in there yet.
It looks like it's an imaginary streets and imaginary alleys and everything else.
Yeah, you'd have sure have to see on the plat for sure, yeah. It shows right on the plat.
Because you drive up there and you don't see no streets or nothing up there.
Well, just, where Jerry Hatton's property is over there on
Yeah.
D Street, there's a turnoff coming off of Jerry Hatton's property right there. That curb cut right there.
Yeah.
That street goes all the way east, straight across there, below Stoger's building, and then there's another street platted here that meets up with this street right here. So all these streets go up and meet the cross street that goes east and west. And there's 25-foot lots in all of that. That's how it was platted. It was platted for mobile homes back in the day. So
right, well, regarding the request for the variance on tract A1, I'll open it up for public comments for or against. Do I have any public comments for or against? See,
Ms. Lara is here.
Ms. Lyra, you are here. Do you want to address the council?
I think Dennis covered everything that I would have said.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the public comments for or against section, close the public hearing, and ask for a motion on Roxanne Lyra's request for a variance as set forth in the agenda on tract A1. I have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the variance presented by Ms. Roxanne Lyra.
I have a motion from Councilman Victorin. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a second from Councilman Patterson. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of granting Roxanne Lyra the requested variance regarding tract A1 of the Lopez Edition third filing as set forth on the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay. Ayes have it, that's passed, that variance is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now, council will return to regular session. Item number 6 on the agenda is the airport fuel branding contract. Consider terminating the airport fuel branding contract with City Service Valcon LLC. Mr. Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There was a airport board meeting that was held on April 11th, 2023. And at length, there was a lot of discussion regarding this topic, and it was recommended that the city no longer participate in the Phillips 66 branding of the fuel dispensed at the airport. According to the termination clause in the contract, the city must give written notice minimum 90 days prior to the anniversary date of the contract. With your concurrence, a letter will be sent to the distributor terminating the current fuel supply contract to be effective on the anniversary date, which will be October 1st, 2023. Some background and history on this. The current fuel supply contract between City Service Valcon and the city was entered into on October 1st in 2017. This contract allowed the city to advertise its fuel being dispensed at the airport as Phillips 66 branded fuel, and allowed the city to enroll in the Phillips 66 branded airport dealers excess liability insurance program. This program provided the city with excess liability insurance coverage over and above the city's own liability insurance coverage in the amount of $50 million per occurrence. To participate in the program, the city had to obtain and maintain a primary liability insurance, including both products liability and completed operations liability in the minimum amount of $1 million per occurrence, and we did that and have that insurance policy through Assured Partners. We just currently renewed that policy on March 26th, and it is good for a year till March 26, 2024. Regardless of the decision you guys make tonight, we plan on maintaining that specific insurance policy. There are several reasons why it was brought up that we need to go this route. The major reason is to allow the airport to shop around for the best price of fuel. City Service Valcon is not necessarily, and maybe even rarely, the low-cost provider of fuel. At the meeting, it was discussed that the Ag Flyers recently purchased jet fuel on the open market at $3.12 per gallon. The city purchased jet fuel within the last, I think, month and a half at $3.74 a gallon. So you can see there's about 60 cents difference per gallon, which could be huge when it comes to attracting airplane and aircraft to the Torrington Airport. Torrington's, I think the major reason why people come to Torrington is we are typically, not always, but typically the low-cost fuel provider in this area. The other reasons are to maintain this Phillips 66 branding, and I didn't put this in the letter, but Mike brought it to my attention that they are now going to be requiring him to do additional testing of the fuel, and that could cause expenses upwards of $5,000 on the city to purchase the necessary equipment to do the testing that they're going to require to maintain that Phillips 66 brand. Other than that, if you guys have any questions, I know Councilman Victorin was there at the meeting and probably could chime in if you want to ask him any questions, ask me any questions.
Councilman Patterson.
Just a clarification question. So this agreement is just a branding agreement, and we purchase the fuel from them, but it's not a set amount or whatever. We buy it from them at whatever the market rate
We
is.
basically are locked into buying it specifically from them at whatever the market rate is.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Other than the advantage of the insurance, wasn't back in 2017 when we did this, supposed to be some kind of an advertising program to tell them about the fuel station here or whatever too, wasn't it?
Currently, we are advertised on what's called the AirNav website, and it is listed there that Torrington is Phillips 66, sells Phillips 66 branded fuel. At the meeting, I went online and looked at AirNav, and of the airports that are listed in this area, 3 of them are currently Phillips 66 branded fuel. One of them is Torrington, one of them is Scottsbluff, and one of them is Shadron. All the rest of the airports, Pine Bluffs, Lusk, Douglas, I think even Cheyenne's listed there, are not Phillips 66 branded fuel. I think the biggest attraction nowadays is the price of the fuel, not the branding of the fuel. So as long as we keep the prices low, people will come and fuel up their airplanes.
And as far as the testing goes, isn't it tested anyway, regardless of what brand's on it?
Yes, the airport does daily testing, but the new testing will be, I think, more severe, causing them to run sumps to the bottom of the tank, pull out fuel, test it.
Mr. Mayor, as the director said, I was at the meeting, and as he mentioned, that the attraction for pilots flying to and from destinations is not necessarily the brand of fuel, but they are always shopping for the lowest price, and a lot of them are also shopping for full service, which is what we offer at the airport. It's worth noting that prior to this agreement, we purchased fuel from the same vendor prior to becoming branded as Phillips 66. So they're supplying the same fuel. There's no Phillips 66 rail terminal that it's not special fuel. Still was prior to this agreement from the same vendor. We're just paying into a program, and that program affords us some advantages. Lately, though, there's a lot of disadvantages, and talking with the airport operator, the testing requirements that they are coming down with are becoming pretty intrusive upon the daily operation of the airport. And like Councilman Kelly said, the airport is currently still and will maintain a testing standard up there. So I see nothing but positives to come from this, that the city can shop for a lower price, be more cost competitive, and likely attract more landings and takeoffs.
And it sounds like, obviously prices change, but right now it's 60 cents cheaper without having the Phillips branding.
For the jet fuel, yeah.
You got any idea how many thousands of gallons of fuel we sell a year?
Boy, thousands of gallons.
I know, we see in the bills
Think
buying 3,000
jet
or 4,000
fuel-
gallons at a time.
You know, I can get you the exact numbers because I do have all that on a spreadsheet, but I, just off the top of my head, I think jet fuel is around 15,000 plus gallons a year. And it's usually the major one because jets take substantially more fuel than the other types of aircraft that fly with the avgas.
See, I always thought that was kind of strange to have a little old town airport selling that much jet fuel. I think it'd be the other way around, but
We get quite a bit of jet traffic that come in here specifically for the price.
Mr. Mayor, worth noting that the airport board is in full support of terminating the contract. If there's no other discussion, I would move to approve terminating the branding contract with City Service Valcon.
I have a motion from Councilman Victron to approve termination of the airport fuel branding contract as set forth in the agenda on item number 6. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Deal. Do I have any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I would call for a vote. All those in favor of terminating or allowing the termination of the airport fuel branding contract as set forth in item 6 on tonight's agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that's approved to terminate the airport fuel branding contract.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is item number 8, ordinance first reading. Mr. Eddington, could you?
Do 7.
I missed item 7. I apologize. Thank you for reminding me. Jumping ahead of myself. Next item on the agenda is item 7. Request to approve the award of a bid for the new side dump refuse truck. Awarding the bid to Peterbilt of Wyoming located in Casper in the amount of $330,300. I know Mr. Ed Hawley is here tonight. Do you want to address us on this item number 7, Mr. Hawley?
Mayor and council, I don't have a whole lot to say on it. And I hope I don't start coughing, but they just keep going up. We did get it in a slot, so we still have an opportunity to get one within the next 2 years. So we could have this one in January. So, and I started working on this back in November, so.
It's my understanding there was only one bid.
There was only one bid. We pretty well want to try to keep the fleet as a Peterbilt fleet and with the same containers. That way it makes it easier for our mechanics, for parts. Pretty much kind of had it picked that way, I guess, but there could have been an option for others.
I see what you're trading in is 27 years old.
Yes.
It's been around for a while.
And I think, Ed, you said the delivery would be January?
In January, yes. If we get it ordered by the 24th.
Of April.
Yes, of this month.
What does, Mr. Hawley, what does that they had a truck on hold for us? What is that?
That was the truck that they put on hold. They didn't let it go out to any others. sales or out to bid or anything. They just put it on hold, waiting for our bid and an answer.
All right, does council have any further questions for Mr. Hawley?
We keep a fleet of 4 trucks, is that correct?
Yes.
2 backups?
We keep 2 backups and 2 main trucks. The backup trucks are 10 years old when they become a backup.
All right, I would entertain a motion to award the bid for the new side dump refuge truck to Peterbilt of Wyoming as set forth in item number 7 on the agenda. Do I have a second for the motion? I have a motion from Councilman Patterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Second from Councilman Deal. Any further discussion, gentlemen?
One question, Mr. Mayor. The cameras? Is that backup
Somehow or
cameras?
another, we missed them when putting out our specs. And that's an option that we would, it's a backup camera and a camera so they can see what's being dumped.
Okay.
And that was $1,200.
That's $1,200.
Any further discussion, council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of awarding the bid for the new side dump refuge truck as set forth in item number 7 on the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay. Hearing none, that's approved, awarded the bid for the new side dump refuge truck. Thank you, Mr. Hawley.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
All right, now we're on item 8. Item 8 is ordinance first reading, repealing ordinance, I believe it's 1097 instead of 1079, dated July 6th, 2010. Mr. Eddington, could you read that for us, please?
It's an ordinance repealing prior ordinance number 1097 dated July 6, 2010, and filed at book 799, page 149 of the Goshen County, Wyoming Real Estate Records. And we'll correct, section 1 is transposed, the 7997. The ordinance is attached that we're repealing, and a little way of background. Back in 2010, Dr. Rutt was building a new home. There was an agreement for this ordinance for him to annex in and bring this in so he could start construction and get utilities. Subsequent thereto, about a year later, he actually platted. There was a plat approved by the council, and it brought his property in. This ordinance, the legal description on this ordinance was actually in error. They plugged in the legal on the east half of this lot instead of the west half of the lot. They're almost identical in size, about 2 foot different. This came to our knowledge last year when we were involved in the Rutt proposed annexation of Kirk below these 2 lots. Engineer Harkins were checking legals and measuring distances and found that this one was incorrectly described in this ordinance. This is actually describing the legal description of Brian Collar's residence, which should not be and is not in the city of Torrington. So this is really just a housekeeping matter, cleaning up this ordinance of record by repealing it. And like I said, Dr. Rutt's home and lot just to the west thereof was annexed via a plat that was approved in 2011. His new home, yes.
So that's squared away, what you just described. Kirk Rutt's squared away at this point too.
Kirk Rutt, we did not proceed with that, so his property below these 2 halves, if you will, his property sits directly below Mr. Collar's and Dr. Rutt's, and that is idle right now until we decide what we're going to do with the rest of the annexation issues. But this repeals this ordinance, so Mr. Collar is not incorrectly annexed.
Move to approve on the first reading.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve repealing this ordinance 1097 dated July 6, 2010 on first reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Victorin. Any further discussion here?
So what we're doing is avoiding this whole description, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, we're repealing the actual ordinance because it contains an incorrect legal description. It contains the right half instead of the left half or the west half of that legal description. Dr. Rutt was over here. That ordinance contains Brian Collar, and we're repealing that because this was annexed in a year later with his plat. The only reason this was done was allow him to start construction the year before the plat was completed.
So just for my understanding, approval of the plat authorizes the annexation, so there doesn't need to be an ordinance with the corrected legal description.
That's correct. The plat includes that legal description that's annexed.
Okay.
And this just matches up legally what is in reality county property of Brian Collar.
Correct.
All right, any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of repealing ordinance 1079 dated July 6, 2010 on first reading signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that is approved. Repealing ordinance 1079 dated July 6, 2010 on first reading.
1097.
1097. 1097.
And we'll correct that typo in section 1.
All right. All right. So we are now on item number 9 on the agenda. Approval of the bills from April 5th, 23 to April 18th of 23. Mrs. Strecker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Attached to your agenda was a list of bills for you to consider tonight, and I also handed out an additional set. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have on those bills.
The increased number of drug tests related to seasonal employees that we're starting to hire those now.
Yes.
And we now have a local provider of those services, right?
Correct.
Are any further questions on the bill that moved to birthday as presented?
I have a motion from Councilman Kelly to approve the bills as presented from April 5th of 2023 to April 18th of 23. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Deal. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the bills from April 5th, 23 to April 18th, 23 as presented in item number 9 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, those bills are approved in item 9. Next item on the agenda is public comment section. Do we have any takers for public comment?
I have a request for citizens.
I didn't hear you from back there, Mr. Hawley.
I have a request for the citizens of Torrington.
Okay.
We've put out the grass bins. Already, we're getting tons of garbage in them. Plastic, stuff we cannot compost, and if we want to make a good compost, we have to have a good product. I could have people interested in it, but most of them don't want to sort the plastic bottles, the plastic bags. For me to clean it up is going to be a big expense. So I can rent a machine to do that, but it's about $6,000 a month or more. So just to take a little common sense and keep the plastic bags out.
So is that the main problem? Instead of dumping the grass clippings out of the bag and then putting the bag, either taking it with you or putting it in the dumpster for the bags at the end of the row, that's the main problem?
It's a whole lot easier to throw the bag and all in,
Without-
obviously.
Now, we're on the radio, okay, and we're going
That's
to be on
fine.
YouTube, so I
Yep.
appreciate the comment. But for people who don't know, I know there's, at Jordan Park in center field, on the other side of the center field fence.
Yes.
Is a row of dumpsters.
Yep.
That are dedicated solely to grass clippings.
Grass.
And then on the south end of the row is a different colored dumpster.
Yep.
Which is dedicated to any sort of trash that you can legally put in a dumpster.
Right.
So people should, grass clippings only, and bags and any
It'd be
other trash.
appreciated, yes.
And there's also some dumpsters over there just east of the middle school.
There's some east of the middle school, there's some up by the hospital, there's some down at Curtis by the recycle center, and there's a couple over by Century Lumber.
And I would note, I haven't mowed my lawn this year, but in the past years when I've dumped over at Jordan, there's a sign that says there's a $750 fine if you're dumping things in those grass clipping dumpsters that shouldn't be dumped in there.
Yes.
Any questions for Mr. Hawley on the grass clipping? I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay,
Ed.
that's all I have. Thank you.
And we have Fire Chief Petch back there. Can you come up here for a very brief report? Good evening.
Evening, Mayor and Council. So, been a little busier last couple of weeks. We've had a few gas calls type things still, but it is turning into kind of grass season. So people are wanting to burning ditches and whatnot. And even with the moisture that we had last week, it still will burn. We learned that Sunday we had a few calls. So kind of ramping up for that, but everything seems to be going well. Cody Fire School will be coming up 2 weeks, I believe. We'll be sending some members up there for some various different kinds of trainings that they can sign up for. So,
You had 2 grass fires last week?
well, we had a controlled burn that was not called in. So when neighbors see lots of flame, they get nervous. So they call, and then you show up and the owner's there or whatnot. So sometimes causes some issues. But we just ask, since we're on the radio, same kind of thing, that if you are going to burn, call dispatch, let them know location, and then when you're going to start and when you're going to be finished. So they'll know, they'll have it on their computers. They get a call, they can say it's a controlled burn, we're fine. Otherwise, they'll page us out and we will show up in force to try to make sure that it doesn't spread or get out of control. So,
And it's just amazing, even with as much moisture as we've had, that grass is still burnable.
yes. Yep. So,
Mr. Mayor, I just want to echo the chief's comment there that it's also always helpful to call dispatch when you're done, so that can be closed out when you're done burning.
yeah. Yes, please, as Chief Johnson just said. So.
All right, any further questions for Fire Chief Patch? Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. We have completed all the items on the agenda for this evening, so this meeting is adjourned.